we're ready.
Go.
Ready for Freddy.
Ready for Freddy. Are you knee steady? Are you rolling in a Chevy? Are you getting it ready? I took the mic straight to the top. Top of this hip-hop game. No shame. Doing it big. Akon, you see. Ludacris doing his thing for Sugar G. With the mind that I trip, that I hit. I'm from the LAC, baby, Cali, baby. One love to the brothers on 3rd Street. Drinking their whiskey and gin. Read your Bible. Pray every day. That's the only way you're gonna make it, man. I'm not Yosemite Sam. I'm Freddie D. Mario Brothers ain't got nothing on me. I stepped once. I stepped twice. That's right, I got advice to make it right. I make it to the top in this industry. I think you wanna be like me for Shiggity. My rhymes are fat, platinum tracks. Platinum tracks, always gonna get the rap right through. Forget you, I walked down a red carpet in case you didn't start it. You heard it now. Booyah. That's right. I do it alright. 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 Like sugar and spice. Like sugar tea and E4D. Snoop Doggy Dogg. Got the twist, smoking on a cigar. That's a trick. He got it going on all the time. He got the ladies in the funky fresh rhyme. But me, Freddie D, jewelry always by the pair. And I do not stare. I glare to the top. Don't you see? I'm the big daddy, coming hardcore, G. I be doing it all the time. Willing to bust a hardcore rhyme on time. That's right, it's tight, and I gotta go. But you heard my show. Peace out, really though. Good to go without a word to say. That's why we pray just to make it today. deep knows it all. That's my old name, G.
Something on the other side. We are all told that truth is merely a conclusion that can reliably be derived from some observable phenomenon. We forget that truth is a tool. It is the hook upon which we hang our deeds and the bed from which we rise each day. To assume that death is the end is to assume that our being extends no further than the physical substrate that carries us. This assumption does not account for the way in which we experience being alive, nor does it sit comfortably aside the fact that we are not yet able to comprehend the way in which our being manifests itself from the flesh and bone that binds us. I believe that those gaps in our understanding are still wide enough to cast doubt on such conclusions. I believe that those gaps are yet wide enough for our souls to fit through and drift onwards into some new realm.
Ducks eat bread.
They do. They like it.
Approaches are, that's where the alignment is between Graham and I.
Okay, so what is bringing down the fourth wall project, Graham?
A terrible spell, and part of that spell, the humans have a campfire circuitry. For whatever reason, probably because it. So like, the television engages that, and like that's when your tribal elders are passing on information and stuff. So like those things are hijacked and make everybody feel like they're audience. And like if you watch characters in series that do break the fourth wall, and that's what the fourth wall I'm referencing when I do it. It's the wall that behind which you are audience and not a human. So
okay.
Hashtag paintball for Jesus, @GrimGrizz, hashtag break the fourth wall.
So like you do like break the fourth wall that doesn't exist and be like,
Break the fourth wall a little bit.
you really helped me break the fourth wall. Like, it's just people.
Good poetry is definitely always trying to break the fourth wall.
Always tried, as GrimGrizz says, to break the fourth wall to the degree that I can.
not walk in the counsel of the wicked, or stand in the way of sinners, or sit in the seat of mockers. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. He is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Everything he does prospers. Not so the wicked. They are like chaff that the wind blows away. Therefore the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the assembly of the righteous. For the Lord watches over the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked shall perish. Blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, or stand in the way of sinners, or sits in the seat of mockers. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. He is like a tree planted by streams of water, which
yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Everything he does prospers, not so the wicked. They are like chaff that the wind blows away. Therefore the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the assembly of the righteous. For the Lord watches over the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked shall perish.
All right, good morning. Just playing around with these things. I'm always playing around with the branding. Too much Psalm 1, not enough Psalm 1. Too much dog bark, not enough dog bark. Too much VNA, not enough VNA. That's the way it goes with people. Yeah, Chad needs some relief there. Oh my goodness. Hey, everybody showing up, and here we are for the Friday morning Bridges of Meaning Discord question and answer. Now, if you'd like to ask a question, there's a bunch of people ahead of you already, but here's the link to the Bridges of Meaning Discord server where you can post a question in there. PVK is the best and the worst. Oh, thank you. So there's the link to the Discord, and it's also in the show notes. I was playing around. To what degree can I put questions here up on the screen? Because I can do something like this, or I can do something like this. But of course, nobody can read it. If I do something like this, well, then you can read the question along with me. So again, I'm just always playing with this stuff. And the first question, the first real question, I had to scroll down a little bit, comes from our friend Jacob Chamomile TV. What does this little corner mean to you as part of your life's work and ministry? It's clear the estuary is your primary thing. I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing online. I've been blogging for nearly 20 years. I've had a podcast for 6. I've always wanted attention, but in today's environment, I'm also afraid of it. And now I'm wondering what it is that I'm doing online. What is worth saying in a world of so many words? That's a good question. It's a very good question. I think about this a lot. Actually, Chad's live stream this morning talked a fair amount about it's more this little corner introspection, navel gazing. I know some people get real sick of it, and oh, more on this. This is boring, yada yada yada. But for those of us who are doing a lot of this, it's a fairly common and important question. I was writing on CRC Voices this morning about the need for the fringe, and I was talking with someone yesterday about how the fringe dynamic is a very strange thing. In some ways, I'm very central in this Christian Reformed church. I have the biggest YouTube channel of any other Christian Reformed minister that I know of, maybe even any other Christian Reformed member. I don't know. There might be some YouTube channels of Christian Reformed members that are bigger than mine. I have one of the bigger Twitter accounts. Kristen Kobes DeMay's account is bigger than mine. So I have influence in the Christian Reformed church. I'm a 3rd generation Christian Reformed minister. I've been president of the Home Missions Board. I've been to Synod. I've served in a whole variety of ways. Someone could make the argument that I'm very central, and another person could say, well, I also feel quite fringe. I'm way out here in Sacramento. I don't pastor a notable, large, or important church in the Christian Reformed church. I have a lot of fringy beliefs, and I seem to have inherited my father's spiritual gift of attracting fringe people. So, yeah, well, thank you, Lisa. My goodness, that's a very generous gift. I appreciate it. I seem to attract a lot of fringe people, and yeah, you can take that as a compliment or an insult in the little corner. And I'm in a perpetual conversation with John Van Donk about the relative value of this little corner versus estuary. This is a point that John speaks to very regularly with me, and almost always, prioritizing and prizing estuary over this little corner. And I see them as flowing together, because estuary sort of flowed out of this little corner. And what is this little corner? And I thought actually Chad and Chezi this morning in Chad's morning live stream, really got at some good elements of it. But at the same time, I thought Chad really said it well. It's this, it's not the other thing. It's little. And there's an element like like this just absolutely crazy branding. Ducks eat bread.
They do. They like it.
We sort of exalt in the odd, the weird, and the idiosyncratic. And it was interesting when Grim Grizz says to Jordan Hall, I think I'm sort of the heart of the little corner. And in some ways, I'd say, yeah, he's right. Grim Grizz has, he's got the branding, he's got all of this stuff. And a lot of people will say, well, this stuff should just go away. And it would all be better if it weren't for all of this silly craziness. Ducks eat bread.
They do. They like it.
But at the same time, there is a participation. And so when Chad and Chezi try to give an idea of this, Grizz tried to put a number on it for Jordan Hall. It's a very elusive thing. Am I surprised that something like this grew around me? On one hand, yes, I never expected any of this. On another hand, no, it's, if you visit Living Stones and you look around, it feels very this little corner. It just does. And as when I was involved in church planting, we all recognized that when you plant a church, that church that is planted by the planter will have elements of that planter for as long as that church is alive. It's just how human beings work. And I think this is something of what makes Christianity work, because somehow, some way, you can look at what does Rupert Sheldrake call mimetic resonance. Somehow, some way, Jesus gets transmitted through time. Orthodox will point to apostolic succession. Protestants will point to the Bible, and there we go. Somehow, some way, through time, something gets transmitted. And this is part of the power of the personal, that persons are so strong and so powerful, and yet so short-lived and vulnerable and subject to change, that in the midst of all of this, you get just the strangest, quirkiest ducks eat bread.
They do. They like it.
And some of you will say, darn it, if you play that silly branding one more time, I'm going to unsubscribe and vow never to do anything in this little corner ever again. Yeah, and here we are. Yes. And we have, I mean, one of the things that I love about the corner is that, gosh, we're all over the place, and man, are we inconsistent, and boy, does it get weird. But and I don't know if Aaron is just if he's being sarcastic or what, but boy, the problem is that, part of this little corner has part of me in it, and I am there's a part of me that is just a darn troll. Ducks eat bread.
They do. They like it.
And it's a good thing I have that little short one. Otherwise, that'd really drive you crazy. Acknowledge that super chat. I did acknowledge that super chat. I said, Lisa, thank you very much. And yeah, I as CW will know, I'll have a one of the things I love about the genius of Grim Grizz is how Grim Grizz sort of turns everything inside out. And so, no, it's good. It's beautiful. So, so again, if you're curious about what I wrote, I haven't posted it on my blog. Sometimes I take things from CRC Voices and post it on my blog. If I wrote it, because things in CRC Voices are supposed to sort of stay in CRC Voices, but they never quite do. It's sort of like honoring the room, but there's just a weirdness, fringiness to me that will always be me. And so some of that got transmitted over into this little corner. And by virtue of the fact that this little corner scales in a way that estuary doesn't, every estuary is going to have its own quirkiness or its own formality or its own vibe or whatever, depending on the spirit of that room, the angel of that room, the angel of that group, the angel of that church. Scenius. Scenius, what a great word. So yeah, back to the question. I still haven't figured out what I really want to think of that, because Rick was exploring all this and he could bring the questions up and back, but Jacob asked about Rick. Maybe it's okay if I share that Rick's father passed away a couple of weeks ago, and that was hard. And Rick has a day job now, and everyone who has a day job, they'll at some point, if we get to know each other well enough, they'll complain to me about their day job, and I will tell them there's a reason they pay you. So yeah, Rick had a lot of tricks that he was able to play and pull and play with, but a big part of this little corner is also play, and that's what's going on with the branding. And Grizz and his genius knew that, okay, we're going to have a Discord server and we're going to have all this video material. And of course, Upcycle gets into this too. And so we're going to upcycle all of this stuff. So this branding that I played from Chad, that was from my little Sacramento tour. So branding takes that and he makes it really trippy. And Even though Chad is sober, it's fun because sometimes his brandings are really trippy, and it's so cool. So I love it. God bless it. It'll probably always be small. It'll always probably be weird. It'll always probably be revolting to some people, but I love it. I love it. And I'm part of it, and it's part of me, and that's what we're doing. So great question, Chamomile. There's a little bit of back and forth going on here. My son Jared notes to people that, I won't click links during the question and answer, and I usually don't prepare. So that's why Joey said short questions for PVK. Michigan man Sam, are deconstruction and skepticism synonymous? If not, why do you think it's so common that the two are equated with each other? This is a short question. I ought to be able to, let's see if I can get this one into the chat. And then the chat seems to split it up. Deconstruction and skepticism synonymous. Well, deconstruction is sort of a loan word from postmodernity. And so many have questioned whether it's the right word for stopping going to church, leaving the Christian faith, leaving that identity. Tim Keller always made the important insight that you don't really, leaving isn't quite accurate. It's more transitioning. You're going from one thing to another. Where was it yesterday? It might have been on a TLC thing. Someone had made the observation of the common quip that the opposite of faith is not doubt, it's certainty. And that's kind of a nice little phrase. And it points to something true, but the truth is that faith, doubt, and certainty all sort of live within an economy together. There's as with many things, we all need a degree of skepticism. Too much skepticism, and you can't live. One of my favorite Waves of Obsession videos was how the rainbow was ruined. That was a great video. I didn't really get it on the channel much, but it was a great video because he pointed to the fact that science ruined the rainbow for him. And there's a lot of part of what our culture has sort of focused on is taking things apart. And we think when we take things apart, we somehow have mastered them. But you dissected that fetal pig or that earthworm in biology class, but you didn't resurrect that fetal pig. Just because you can take it apart doesn't mean you can put it back together, Humpty Dumpty and all. So a lot of people leave the faith, or people leave the faith for different reasons. People have noticed the pattern of a little too certain kinds of strident fundamentalism overpromise, and hence when people are disappointed by the overpromising, they walk away, and then they're subjected to almost anything. Part of the beauty of not leaving the church, of staying with the church despite your skepticism, CW notwithstanding, few people are run out of church. And CW, you can ask him about his story, was run out of one particular church, basically because he sort of made them do it. And that's just classic CW. So when you look at, say, Rachel Held Evans and the movement that she sort of pioneered, which has been sort of this evangelical, mainline-ish movement. I'll have to think more about that. It's a good question. But on the whole, I think it's, for many people, these transitions can in the long run be helpful and important. That is not to say that for many people, these transitions are destructive and a net loss and very sad. I see both. And I think part of my job is to help people profit from their transitions instead of lose from them. But I will tell you, this kind of, that's not in our hands. You know, I am at the end of the day a Calvinist, which one of the things that prioritizes is the sovereignty of God in all things and the limitation of our capacity to know and wield. So, yeah. I can't wait for your video on Sam Harris's appearance on Alex O'Connor's podcast. I didn't even know that podcast was out there. Contrary to some opinions, I don't have 18 hours a day to watch videos. And there are times, just basically depending on the flow of my schedule, that I can catch up on a bunch of videos. And there are times when I get way behind. And I'm only halfway through Vervaeke and Nate's conversation about Hermes. And since I'll be talking to John Vervaeke, we've got a schedule quite a bit a ways from now to talk about that more. So I'm continuing to think and pray about that, and John's continuing to read. And so I'm really looking forward to that conversation. I mentioned on an impromptu live stream last night on Grim Grizz's channel that I'm a little disturbed about the amount of attention Hermes is attracting. I think it's a valuable and important conversation, but it's a little bit ironic to do a lot of hand-wringing about Hermes' colonization of John Vervaeke while Hermes colonizes you through John Vervaeke. So all things in good time. We will know them. You discern the spirits by their fruit. So yeah, so that's coming. But I started like 2-3 minutes into Sam Harris and Alex O'Connor. Yeah, that's a video, very much a video I want to watch. Alex O'Connor is very much a person that I'm watching, because he is clearly someone who has, there are different people that sort of embody a movement as they go. And Alex O'Connor is living out. We are watching Alex O'Connor, who is very smart, well-educated, very articulate. He is deconstructing his new atheism, and we are watching it in progress. And that's part of the reason that conversation with trigonometry was so interesting, because so often I watch people sort of, okay, so a bunch of people, because of this whole political valence, liberal, conservative, yuck, yuck, yuck. Okay, so now Konstantin Kissin is a hero, and it's like, he's a rather interesting hero. He's deeply skeptical, and it was ironic when you set him across from Alex O'Connor. Konstantin Kissin is the existentialist authenticity skeptic, and it may very well be the case that Alex O'Connor, along with a whole group of other people, continues to talk his way into the Christian faith. I would not be in any way surprised that 3 or 4 years from now, Alex O'Connor is going to say, you know, I've joined the Anglican Church. I've become an Anglo-Catholic, and I sit right down the aisle from Tom Holland. That wouldn't surprise me. Although maybe they would never fess up to it. Maybe they sneak in, sort of like Douglas Murray, or maybe his status is so high that it binds and blinds him and keeps him out of the church and makes him a fringe character like Jordan Peterson. I don't know. But Aslan is on the move, and things are happening, and it is glorious and fun to watch. And I'm not going to name names because that sort of puts people in corners, but I think we are going to continue to see high-profile people who are known for being skeptical about Christianity, begrudgingly get dragged into the kingdom. And C.S. Lewis said he was the most reluctant convert in all of England. Well, I don't know about that, and there'll be many more countries to be heard from. So here we go. Let's see. Oh, here's a question. Good day, Paul. I've been reading and listening to Father Hare, Monk Seraphin Rose's work, which I'm sure most Orthodox here will be familiar with. Seraphin Rose, very interesting character. He has a bit to say about the movement and inevitably ecumenism and its endpoint being the seat of the Antichrist. Ooh, that's interesting. I'll have to check that out. TLC looks a lot like a movement of ecumenism. What is your take on this observant hot take, and what does it make a difference? And what do you see most likely in TLC to take that seat? There's definitely an ecumenical character to the TLC. Let's see how many comments this thing folds into. Oh, 3. And the TLC is itself a border fringe thing. Now, ecumenism ostensibly attempts to realize the Christ's prayer in John 17 that all of his followers would be one. Ecumenism attempts to Ecumenism tends to focus on institutional and joining of communion. Again, I'm sitting with Chad on the bus in Chino. Someone on the bus makes a comment about, there's a guy on these videos who shows up in a mask. Chad turns to the guy and says, yeah, he's a real asshole. This is something like that. And then Chad turns to me and says, wouldn't it be great if all of us here were in the same church? And I said, Chad, we can't even do communion together. And I've also shared the story that, you know, when we put together the Thunder Bay conference, I was quite anxious when I learned that that we were going to have communion at that service, because I thought, oh, the Orthodox can't partake, the Catholics can't partake, most of the skeptics shouldn't and probably won't partake. The only ones to partake are going to be Protestants like myself. I wouldn't have a problem partaking, but I felt bad partaking and breaking a little bit of TLC communion with my friend John Vervaeke and Jonathan Peugeot, so then I didn't partake. And then John Vervaeke mentioned that to me on a stream. He said, I noticed you didn't partake. Why? And I told him because I didn't want to ostracize my non-Christian friends. I wasn't worried about ostracizing the Orthodox and the Catholics because we all sort of understand those rules. And, you know, if I would attend a Catholic Mass, I would cross my arms because I love and respect them. And I want to respect their church. And if I would attend an Orthodox church, I don't know how that would go. But at some point, I'm sure I'll attend an Orthodox service and learn more about that. And I don't know. And again, I'm still trying to get my mind around Orthodoxy because it's a little chaotic and you folks seem to like it that way, which is totally cool. So yet at the same time, I would say that the TLC isn't really ecumenical in as much as it is Silk Road and C.S. Lewis hallway, mere Christianity. And so, yeah, there is and I was, you know, when I was taking some notes on Grail countries on Nate and John's conversation, and a point that I make regularly is there's the antithesis. I'm dyslexic. The screens throw me off. There's the antithesis, black and white, true and bad, good and false. That's true. It's true. And then there's also common grace. And Abram Kuyper, patron saint of Dutch Calvinists, is, as an author, emphasizes both. And many people who go to Abram Kuyper, some come away with the antithesis and some come away with common grace. The danger of the analog, the nuanced, the minutia, is that it can sort of dissolve into nothingness. The difficulty of the antithesis is it can dissolve into purity spirals. Now, that doesn't mean you should balance them, because this gets into Tim Keller following Jonathan Edwards' divine diverse excellencies, where Jesus manages to both be more antithetical than any of us dare to be, because we are sinners, and more generous than most people dare to imagine is responsible. So Jesus is both more gracious and more demanding. And that was a big theme of Tim Keller's ministry too, and it was right on. You don't resolve the antithetical and the gracious with balance. Now, most of us in reality have to pick and choose. And so even in picking and choosing, there's realities to this. To pick and choose is to be antithetical. But to pick and choose among minutia tends to lead towards the nuanced. So we have all of these tensions we have to deal with. And you always deal with them in life. And that is part of, again, one of the big contributions Peugeot has made is reinforcing and explaining what we read in our men's group at Living Stones in Leviticus. Don't harvest your field to the corners. Leave the corners. Leave the fringe. And what that dynamic affords is both the antithesis and the nuance. It doesn't remove them. So ecumenism tends to try to pursue institutional union and communion through the table. Will Jesus' prayer be fully realized before he comes? I don't know. But for me, this little corner, for the reasons I talked about before, is a fringe, is a border creature. It is a border creature, and I think it will always, it's a corner. It's the corner of the field. Ducks eat bread.
They do. They like it.
It's the corner of the field. And the misfits and poor of the earth come to glean here. They come to eat from the master's field, even if at this point, maybe they don't have a wedding garment. And so they dare not go into the wedding lest they be cast out. And that this is downstream from Jordan Peterson with his Code of Many Christians, or, I mean, Peugeot for years has been saying it's going to get weird. Well, boys and girls, it's weird. You've got Jordan Peterson. His wife joins the Catholic Church. His daughter tends to commune with evangelicals. And he keeps wearing coats that either offend or encourage. So he's a liminal figure. John Vervaeke is a liminal figure. I'm a liminal figure. Grim Grizz is a liminal figure. Fringes have fringes. And corners have corners. So we are in one of these, there's this thing about 500-year transitions. Well, we seem to be in one of them. The last one was the Protestant Reformation. And these transitions never fully get completely pure. They might have sort of a bell curve, and where we are on that bell curve, I don't know, but here we are. And so I think what we will see coming, churches 100 years from now might look more strange to us than how churches 100 years ago look to us now. Churches 700 years ago look very strange. I picked up a book, picked up another book, Bookaholics Anonymous. I picked up another book because I saw a video, the author's writing. I'm a little annoyed at the book because ironically, the book is sort of wants to be kind of, it sort of wants to be wholly post-evangelical. But what's ironic about it is that the aspects of it are harming the historical quality of the book, and I think a rather critical way, but there's still stuff in the book that I can glean from. But where was I going with this book? But anyway, the book was on basically trying to get at what cultural Christians were all the way through in the 3rd century. That's what the book is about. I should probably have the author on. She seemed like a lovely young woman. But it's because the truth is that truth is always so astoundingly messy. So in the member section, I made a rather transparent video about ministry. And I made that a day after I was really exasperated. But I was really exasperated. I was going to make a video. It's probably good that I didn't make it because I probably would have said some things I shouldn't have said. And then right after that, I had to visit someone in their home, and it's people that I dearly love. They're close friends. They just haven't been around much for a whole variety of very good reasons. But I went to their home to deliver an invitation to my son's wedding, and just spent 45 minutes with them in their living room, and just again realized all the reasons I love them. And part of why this little corner is weird, and part of why it gets its weirdness from me and my radical openness, is I love a lot of people, even people that a lot of people say I shouldn't love. You know, CW can be an acquired taste at times. Where are some of my more favorite acquired tastes, even though they would be, Hank. Hank is an acquired taste. I'm looking for one. There's one of my favorite acquired taste individuals. Gosh, if anybody has, I have regularly had people send me notes telling me I should never talk to Jacob again. I should denounce Jacob. I should, and I won't. I can't. I just love Jacob. And now Jacob would be, if you really loved me, you do X, Y, and Z. And, Sam too. And so a big part of this little corner is just this crazy. He really is. He really, really is. So it's just the way I am. And yeah. Jacob is the villain we need. We all know when a supervillain shows up. It's too much fun. So yeah. But again, Jordan Peterson is the unauthorized exorcist of Mark 9. And, Father Eric is right. We're all sort of downstream from him. And here's another character. That's right. No, it isn't all good. Nope, it's not all good. But then again, I'm a Calvinist, and so I'm to a certain degree comfortable with the fact that total depravity is a very real thing, 100%. So, all right. More comment than a question. Quick question from Valerie. I answered it. The writers of meaning anthology. Valerie's still working on it. Valerie has a YouTube channel. I found it and I subscribed to it. And so they're still working on that anthology. I can't wait to see. Yes, my name is Vander, Vander space Klay, which and sometimes turns me into Mr. Clay when computers can't figure out a space. And so I have multiple identities, I guess. Here's a fun question. I have a question about a Bible passage. So Peter and the other disciple started for the tomb. Both were running, but the other side disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. But then Peter goes into the tomb first. So there's probably a ton in that observation, some of which we're probably reading into it, eisegesis. But, physically, John is younger than Peter. Peter is probably the oldest disciple. John is probably the youngest disciple. And in that way, John is the beloved disciple, probably because he's younger. I mean, you can work this so many different ways. I've mentioned this series of encyclopedias before that are very this little corner. And this is why I believe in the providence of God. I first came to Living Stones, and somehow InterVarsity Press sends me an invitation for the, let me go get it. Sends me an invitation for the, that's it. Focus. You can do it. There you go. Ancient Christian commentary on the scriptures. Now this was when I was, it's so funny, all the iterations of ministry I've had. This is when I was when I got to Sacramento from overseas, and the denomination sends me to Willow Creek, and I learn about their 7 steps, and then I visit Saddleback and I learn about their baseball diamond. And, I'm trying to be a good minister, and I'm reading all these business books. Got so many business books around here and the denomination is sending us business books because we as ministers are supposed to be CEO of prevailing institutions and blah, 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 and yuck, and all of this stuff. And I get this thing in the mail, and I subscribe, and that is not like me, because every month every couple of months they send me a new commentary, and I got to pay for it, and it's like $30, and I'm like, oh, but I'm also enough. Well, I pay my bills, so I really should unsubscribe, but I never get around to it because I procrastinate. And I have every single one of these commentaries and every month I begrudgingly pay it, and I fail to unsubscribe, and a new one comes. And yeah, that's why Substack is really dangerous for me. So I have all of these things, and every now and then I look at them. I'm also very interested in history of interpretation, and I start reading, and what this commentary does, and why it's very this little corner, very orthobro friendly. It takes, I know you will, Transfigured. It takes these passages, and it gleans from all of the writings of church fathers, some of them a little obscure, and it basically cuts and pastes a commentary from all these church fathers of what they said about scripture. And there are times when it's just darn weird, because church fathers are weird. I'm sorry, orthobros. They're weird, but it's a cool weirdness. I want to make lots of videos about They Flew. It is such a wild, great book. And a little plug here for Kale. Kale has both Diane Pashuta, the Catholic woman who writes about UFOs, and Carlos Erie coming, darn it, maybe I'm going to go, coming to his neck of the woods for a conference. He's going to have both these people in the same room. And I am so jealous. Can I do it? I think that's going to be just an outstanding event. And I so want to be there. And you're right, Phlebas. Do they still fly? Why not? Why did they start? Because that's the weirdness of it. Because, the only one we find in scripture flying, is Simon Magus. He flew. And so there's this wild, and Erie gets into this. There's this, all of these Catholic saints are hounded by the Inquisition. And the way that John of Cupertino is treated, oh gosh, the thing is, it's so weird, it has to be true. Because if you want to know true things, it's usually because it's too weird to be believed. Now, some things that are weird are untrue. I mean, historically speaking, physical correspondentism, the stuff I'm always criticizing. So it's incredible. Anyway, so yeah, see Cale Zeldin for that. Go there if you can. I am so tempted to fly out there, but it's going to come. It would come at a heavy price for me just because of the timing. So I pray that maybe we can do a GoFundMe for Cale to have a professional videographer get in there and do it right. Think about that, Cale. I will contribute to that. You should sell virtual tickets, and it doesn't even have to be live streamed, because I'll tell you, most of these schools can't handle a live stream. But if you have trouble raising the funds to do a GoFundMe to get it properly recorded and videotaped, I will contribute to that. I will definitely contribute to that, because to have those two authors together, wow. And now let me add some TLC-ness into this, because a lot of people think, see, plain old YouTube is just, sorry, I really like Chris Williamson. We've met. I have a degree of fondness for him. He'd probably come on the show if I asked him. I should probably ask Chris Williamson to come on the show. But plain old YouTube is Chris Williamson. This little corner means we don't talk to everyone and everything. Although, let me say it a different way. We don't prioritize the hierarchy. We will talk to almost anyone and everything. But we want our conversations to be leaning in towards a relationship. And that's why we limit conversations, because I can't have a relationship with all of these people. So I want to have a limited group. So it isn't just chasing hierarchies and chasing fame. It's building a relationship. And I think that's an essential part of this little corner. It's about, maybe Joe Biden or Donald Trump want to talk to me. Well, the thing is, I'll talk to just about anybody. But I don't go out and chase people to talk to, because I'd rather have a relationship. So, yeah, right. Anyway, I've distracted myself. So yeah, I can't answer your question, but look it up. I'm sure the church fathers have a lot to say about it, and part of it'll be wild. For us American Christians, what obligations do we have to live in states that are more conducive to our values and lifestyle? Do we have an obligation to leave if we can? For example, our state laws passes to take our children away if we disagree with affirming their chosen gender, or use our tax dollars to fund abortion? Or should we remain or even move to states that are more hostile to us in order to shine the light of Christ even brighter in the darkness? Both. And I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with saying, I don't want to live in California because I don't want my tax dollars to support the values of the legislature of California. By all means, move to a state that is much more in alignment with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. at the same time, there's absolutely nothing wrong with being a missionary to a place that you don't agree with in order to let your light shine, both and. And so I don't have a problem with that. It's a matter of calling. Hi, Paul. I've recently discovered that I'm aging. I'm just looking at all of these, these little age spots that you get because I don't have. Oh, I miss my hair. And the funny thing about hair is it's still trying, but then it's like I gotta cut it. I mean, if you've watched my channel for 6 years, you know that yeah, I don't not a slave to hygiene. That doesn't mean hygiene is the wrong word. Not a slave to fashion. There we go. I wear blue shirts because they fit well, and I found one that I liked, and I was afraid they'd stop making them. I can't get them anymore, so I bought a bunch. So hence all of the blue shirts. I tell you, every day is a clean shirt. I'll tell you that. They all look the same, but just think Steve Jobs. I realize that I'm aging, and I'm going to continue. Yes, you are. And realize that life is not what I thought it would be when I was younger. That's true too. I thought I had more time, and I'm disappointed. Yep. Everybody's going to realize that at some point. Or they realize they don't have much time and they're happy with it. And I don't mean that in terms of suicide at all. I mean, so again, I have in my ministry a lot of older people, and people get to a certain age. Their health gets to a certain point. Their quality of life gets to a certain point, and they just look at me and say, I'm ready to go. I say, I understand. When did you discover that you were aging, and how did you react or cope? Personal question. That's good. On one hand, it's sort of a slow dawning, and on the other hand, it comes with episodes. So when my father died, I always sort of imagine it. We're all walking towards this cliff. And when you see lots of people ahead of you, it's like, oh, and then you watch them disappear. So I went to a Christian school, and there was about, 100 kids that sort of went through us from K to 12. I wasn't very old when I heard about the first death in our class. It was a suicide. And he was kind of a fringe person too, not unlike many of the kind of people we have in the corner. And because his name was very close to me, there's a lot of Vanders. He sat behind me in a number of classes in a number of places, and he always had a rough go of it. And at that point, the Christian Reformed Church was very much a communal thing, and I suspected his family was poor, but the churches would pull together, so even the poor kids could go to high-priced Christian schools, and he was probably one of those kids. And he took his life at one point. So that was the first death. And then about 10 years later, I heard of another death, and I don't know why he died. He might have been gay, and it might have been AIDS. Then I heard of a couple more deaths. And then I haven't actually been able to make it to a class reunion. I looked a lot different in high school than I look now. A lot different. In fact, there was an event, and I was a foreign missionary, and my mother sent in a picture of myself and my wife and our oldest son, who at that point was like 2, sitting on our laps, and people didn't recognize me at all, and they didn't recognize her because they didn't know her. And I mean, people just couldn't pick me out in a lineup from how I looked in high school. And I've continued. Some people look the same way their whole life, and some people look different. And so, all my life I've changed. And every now and then we have a work day at church, and I realize I can't work like I did when I was 20, but in my head, I still think I can. And I can't. And part of that is I should probably exercise more and do more. But so my father dying, and then my sister died. And when my sister died, and she was 2 years younger than I am. So my sister died when she was 53. And wow. So, and then you begin to realize that I mentioned this in a video that I haven't released yet. It's not a No Wait No Ads either. I was going to release it today, but I decided to release the Jordan Peterson video. I look around, I look at who's going to synod, and there's a lot of names I don't know. And I compared it to who went to synod in 1999. Most of the names I did know, or many of the names I did know, at least of pastors. So you begin to realize that, yeah, things are changing. And then you begin to realize that there's a bunch of things that you always thought you would achieve or become that you haven't, and a window is closed, and you'll never get there. And it was, this was a couple of decades ago when it would start, some of the stuff really started to, when I had my midlife crisis. Now I do have a yellow car now, so that some of you noticed, and some people might look at that car and say, he's having a midlife crisis. Well, I'm having a lot of fun with the car. And I have justifications for some of the things with respect to it. But anyway, that's when I sort of began to think a lot more about the resurrection, and about a lot more about the life of the age to come, and a lot more about, I began to lean in and derive Christian hope from thinking about the fact that this is just a chapter. And I think about the age to come a fair amount, and I've got lots of questions. But what I mostly lean into is trust, because I go to the analogy that an unborn infant in the womb knows very little about life outside the womb. We know very little about life in the age to come. And the truth is, if you would try to communicate to that infant in the womb what their life would be like, it'd be pointless. And then there's all these like mental things about, if I at 60 could go back and talk to myself at 19. I answered that question here. Chad asked it, and a lot of people didn't like the answer, but it was completely true. You know, what would you say to your 19-year-old self? Oh, you'll have a hot wife. Because that's what my 19-year-old self was caring about. Most of the rest of what's really important to me now, my 19-year-old self couldn't really process. There's something to age that if you pay attention and you grow in wisdom, you learn. And one of the things that you learn as someone who is a professional communicator, like I am, the limits of communication. So, what can God communicate to me about the life of the age to come? Probably not a lot, in the same way that I can't communicate very well to an unborn fetus or even to my dog. But a parent of that unborn child will raise that child and cares for that child and helps that child grow. And I believe that this is what's coming for me in Christ in the age to come. So if I could communicate to one of my unborn children, which I did. I mean, my wife's there, and her belly's great, and stroke the belly, and they can hear our voices. They won't know what we're saying, but they can hear our voices. And then when they come out and they don't consciously think it, but they feel comfort because, oh, there's mom's voice, there's dad's voice. Here's mom's smell, here's mom's skin. This is what it means to nurse. And so I believe that God will, just as God has brought me through this life now, and many of the hard things, Many of the hard things he's turned to my benefit. When I think about what it means to die, and I trust him. If I can trust him because he's used hard things for my benefit, and he's taught me that faithfulness is worth it. I love the new theme that Peterson is on in terms of sacrifice. And Peterson's still a little bit stoic. There's not enough grace in him. And towards the end, Russell Brand will bring in more grace. And I think part of what's good about that, and I hope I have the determination to make it all, do a commentary all the way through that video, is because Peterson struggles with grace. He's really a preacher of works, righteousness. But Brand knows something about grace, because it's the woman who's who barges into the banquet at the Pharisee's house and washes Jesus' feet. And Jesus says, those who have been forgiven much love much. So, and for me, it's easy because I completely understand. I have had a great life. I had great parents. I had good years growing up. God has given me good things. And so is it easier for me to trust him than many people who I've had on my channel that have had hard stories? And there are a lot of people in this corner that have had hard stories. Now, here's the problem with being a pillar of a community. You're going to get named. Grim Grizz has a hard story. Chad the Alcoholic has a hard story. Many of the randos conversations that I've had, people have had hard stories. It's easy for me to trust because he's been good to me. It's hard for some of you to trust because life has been hard. And so that's where I want to lend you the faith that I have. And that's why I preach. To believe that he will birth you into a new creation. And to now in faith continue to strive towards the kinds of righteousness, the kinds of obedience, the kinds of stuff that Jordan Peterson wants to lead people into. There's different ways to deal with this works righteousness issue, but it all flows from his mercy. And so how do you cope with it? You cope with it with the gospel. You cope with it with the gospel. That's how you cope with it. Because I look at atheists. I look at people who are at least ostensibly trying to believe that the grave is the end. And I say, oh, what do you do with your life? Because on one hand, think about the parent who suddenly discovers they're pregnant. Either you caused the pregnancy or you are pregnant. And you think, I want to max my life out now. Abort the baby. A lot of people do that. It's not the only reason abortions happen, but it certainly is part of it. That baby is inconvenient. You're darn right that baby's inconvenient. You have no idea yet how inconvenient that baby's going to be. And the inconvenience of that relationship is going to compound. And so some people abandon. Some people never show up. Some people check out even if they don't leave. Some people, one way or another, you abandon that relationship and you leave that poor kid to its own devices out there in the world. Because you've only got one life to live. YOLO. If in fact you believe in the life of the age to come, if in fact you believe that your faithfulness, even to the inconvenient, will be rewarded in this life and the next. Realized salvation, anticipated salvation. See, part of the limitation of Jordan's preaching is he can really only lean into realized salvation. And there's enough meat on the bone there to make a point. But there's also in this age realities of, one of the most beautiful things about Jordan Peterson, to the best that we know, is that he loves his wife and she loves him. And he hasn't, I'm sure that there'd be plenty of temptations to, now that he's rich and famous, to go look for a younger unit. There are certain very high-profile men that have serially divorced their wives and even gone to try to sleep with high-status courtesans. Can't imagine. That's natural behavior. And it all leads from looking at death. And so part of how old men try to feel young again is to sleep with a hot young woman. If you believe in the resurrection and you believe in the age to come, you have resources to deal with the fact that you are growing older. And you have resources to deal with, to lean into being responsible and obedient and faithful to inconvenient people, many of whom might be your family. And if you do that, you will, number one, realize. Someone sent me, I should put it on Vanderclips and it should put it in a video. There's a remarkable Scott Adams, the dude who is so down on marriage and women, and, the guy is burdened, and, there's one little video, he says, the happiest time of my life was when I took my stepdaughter to soccer practice. This guy, it's a stepdaughter. Someone might say, oh, you cuck. How dare you take somebody else's offspring to soccer? And Scott Adams basically says, the most meaningful part of my life was my relationship with my stepdaughter. And I'll tell you. So even it scales. Even this dog I've got right here. Now, I'm not going to keep this dog. My wife doesn't want us to keep the dog or do another dog because, dogs are inconvenient and stuff. And I agree with her. There's times when it's like, oh, I got to take care of that darn dog. But, oh, gosh, do I love this little dog. This is an amazing little dog. And this dog walks off the leash with me. I can train this dog to do just about anything. It is phenomenal. Now that I've learned a little bit of dog training, and now that this dog has been basically bred to be just optimized training, it's like, this is an incredible animal. But, I don't love the dog because the dog can do incredible things. I love the dog because I love the dog, because I've had a lot of other dogs that were just not trainable for anything, and I loved them too. And I cried along with my kids when those little dogs died, and the big dogs, and the guinea pigs. So if you lean into the age to come, yeah, it's worth it. It's worth it. All right, let's see. Were there other questions? Does God have opinions about architecture? Feel free not to respond. Beauty. I think he definitely does have opinions about architecture. But we are complex with these things, and God is infinitely more complex. So, yeah. All right. Joseph, the Lance Joseph McMoe conversation that you reshared was fascinating. Yes, it was. This is not a short question. Yeah, finally my short question. I'll read it anyway, Joseph. Coming back to it after Passover. One thing struck me, the concern over how these things get passed down to our children. And this should be an important concern for these converts. How does a self-selecting, sorted group attracted by features of one denomination pass that love down to their children who've had a range of personalities? That's right. Honestly, I think that convo and honesty, many others here come down too hard on the thinky-talky arguing over propositions. Many here try to avoid such arguments. Let's do a peaceful dialogue where by all means, philosophia, kumbaya. Part of this people trying to certain forms of the internet and in real life argument. Part is romanticizing of the right brain a la McGilchrist. And any argument is taken as negative, philonaikia, as a zero sum. And therefore we should stress avoiding, mitigating, and helps teach orthobros to just do liturgy and fasting and stop arguing. I don't know that that's the case. My first conversation with Brendan Dempsey, that was a little contentious, but I think we both enjoyed it. So I think what we're trying to avoid is what we see too much of on YouTube, which is just all dunking and no relationship. So yes, there's always tipping points here, but I'll continue. And yes, the Passover Seder is full of storytelling and ritual and poetry and song. It's all right brain stuff, but there's also thinky-talky and a theme, even if to engage the propositional and healthy arguments. We have both brains. If we are envisioning teenagers and people in their early 20s and people on the spectrum and just certain personalities, especially of certain men, specifically to be part of eventually mature communities and not ignoring them or belittling them, which will push them out, we need to learn how to incorporate them from multi-generational communities to survive. Finally, my short question: what religious and cultural resources beyond TLC do you find as good models of healthy argumentation or ways of teaching it? I don't know that. I think most of this has to be embodied. And I think Jews do it well. I think Dutchmen do it well. That there have been any Dutchmen in the CRC here know that, at least older ones, that past generations in the Christian Reformed Church could be enormously contentious. But the Dutch had this way of fighting like cats and dogs and then sitting down and enjoying a meal together. And the Jews do that. And other societies do that. So that's why I don't have a problem with having scraps break out, and I don't have a problem with did we lose our furry character? I should have started. He's probably moved on, but I don't have a problem with Jacob in this community. I don't have a problem with Jacob calling me this thing and that thing. Jacob can. Yeah, that doesn't mean that every now and then, I don't flinch, but usually if I flinch, I have to stop and ask myself, why did I flinch? Because that usually tells me something about myself. And so the attack, and the book of Proverbs talks about this. So yeah, no, I agree. Resources, just be in real relationships. Go to Thanksgiving dinner. Have a real family. You'll fight. Jacob Swizer: how does one submit to spiritual authority? Are we to pick leaders that we like and agree with doctrinally and theologically? This is a problem with church being a voluntary organization. Like, if I decided to be a Christian, I would think I should truly submit, that I must convert to Catholicism. Then why doesn't the Pope submit to the rabbis? So I have friends of mine who work very hard on these voluntary submission things. Jacob, quite rightly, with his experience in very observant Jewish communities, I've heard other people say this too, basically says most people out there in the world wouldn't last a week in these communities because they are really controlling about certain things. I've seen Pentecostal traditions do this. I've seen Orthodox do this. I've seen Catholics do this. I've seen, yeah, there he is. There he is. He's still here. Look, there he is. Our furry, fuzzy friend who has no hair. This is the way it is. I have a friend who CRC Chi plants a church with a Baptist minister, and they both are like, well, I'll give up my doctrinal allegiance for the sake of you. No, I'll give it up for the sake of you. There's something really powerful in that. There's also something that can get out of whack with that. So submission, like all this antithesis nuance stuff, it scales. And part of what's difficult, again, about it, that's why I've made the crack a number of times that for me to become Orthodox would be a very Protestant thing for me to do. Probably the more Orthodox for me to do is to stay in my Dutch tribe and try and be faithful there. And if the Orthodox influence me theologically, maybe try to contribute to our Dutch Calvinism what I've learned from Orthodoxy. It seems like a very Orthodox strategy. So, yeah, it's a good question. I've always struggled with belief. I wouldn't say that I'm particularly adverse to believing, but anytime that chattering writer gets involved, that part of my awareness seems to demand a tangible result that I can't give. Your videos help me sort out a good deal of my experiences, but I don't think we've found anything that lands for me that I've heard for others in the TLC. I'm not sure if it's my disposition or if it's something that I'll know when I see it. How do you know you believe? How do you know your belief and what goes into your belief? That's a super good question. Our beliefs are not subject to our wills, and that's a good thing, generally speaking. No one can answer this for you. And I've known people that, Jordan Peterson again. I'm a border. I should find that quote again. I'm a border figure. Some of us are just prone to wander. I had an intern, a young minister who was training under me. He just had a restless spirit. He was always looking for the next thing. What probably would be the best for him is just taking a vow of staying. Stay in one place a long time. Lean against that restlessness. Maybe for you, it would be to submit to a belief structure that you don't fully believe in, and just decide for yourself. Pick an arbitrary time for the next 5 years. You're going to stay in this community despite the fact that you don't believe like they do. Now, make sure it's a community that can tolerate that. But there'll be a lot of tongue biting and a lot of this, but you'll probably learn something about who you are with respect to belief. Again, part of one of the really good pieces of the Peterson brand conversation was Peterson nicely articulating the fact that you have to be subject to something. If you're not subject to something, then you are a prisoner of yourself. I saw Mostly Not Working had a meme. I guess it's a little meme. There's a boot on this little kid's face, and it looks like some horrible person is like pushing this little kid's face into the ground. And then the camera pulls back and you see that his arm is in the boot on his face and he's smiling. That's a good meme because it shows that for most of us, the greatest tyrannies that we are subject to are tyrannies inside of us. And that's the whole point of dealing with our epithumia or our desires or all of these, and then to be broken by that. And often a way to be broken by that is to make yourself subject to something else. And if there's one thing that is unbroken in us by design, it's our structures and our mechanisms of adopting beliefs. Subject yourself to a belief system that maybe you aspire to, but you can't quite get there. And so then just go into that community and LARP, act like you believe. And it could be that fake it till you make it, 5 years in, you might not get all the way there. You might decide you need to leave that community. You might decide a whole bunch of things, but at least you've given it a try. Okay, what time is it? All right. Why Jacob F? So Jacob F. Most days he puts on his troll boots and pants and goes out mucking around. That's right. He claims Calvinism is indefensible and apparently remembers nothing ever said to defend it. Actually, never mind. Apparently, I just needed to vent. Yeah, there's no question here. And I think he hates Paul so much because of the whole, I count all my learning and achievement as crap compared to Christ. And so it hits too close to home, and he doesn't want to open that door. 9-digit Eric. Woo! Jacob just gotta be Jacob. Jacob just gotta be Jacob. Love the guy for who he is. All right. Question. Do you share John Vervaeke's concern about Christian nationalism? The big issue with us right now is how to figure out the relationship between divine hierarchies and political hierarchies in a pluralistic world. Religion is dollars, politics is cents. Religion is always, politics is now. Religion and politics deal with similar necessary structures. And so the political and the religious will never be fully divorced. If they were totally separate, the Bill of Rights wouldn't have to stipulate a separation of church and state. And, it's sort of the incredible opponent processing of John Adams and Thomas Jefferson that created what we enjoy in the United States. And you see Canada and England wrestling with it. Now, I think this term Christian nationalism is a bad term because it prejudices the conversation. Every political system is going to, by necessity, attempt to instantiate a worldview of how reality works. How reality works is religion. If your political system doesn't in some way instantiate how reality works, it's not going to work well. And, this is obviously the problem with communism. It just doesn't work. And it can be seen not to work. Various forms of tyranny actually work better. A lot of imperial systems work better than communism, but we don't want them either. The American experiment, I touch on this a little bit, and the American experiment did something really interesting in that it derived a political system from a coalition of Protestants who couldn't agree on their religion, but had enough agreement that you could instantiate a political system. It afforded a considerable degree of pluralism without getting too autocratic with respect to a number of things. And so, where is Transfigured? Where is Sam? Because Sam has argued that, a lot of what we have been blessed by in the American political system actually comes from Unitarians. So how about that? But the obviously, the limited pluralism of Protestantism couldn't really adequately engage or enfold, let's say, Native Americans or African slaves. And so it had its tyrannical aspect as well. Part of what happens then in the 19th century is Catholics and Jews come into the scene. So by the middle of the 20th century, we're starting to try to enfold Catholics and Jews. But now, because of jets and nets, the whole world is here. So we've got India. Oh, I can give out new. I can give out new. I can give out. No. I gotta. I shouldn't enter. No, Paul, focus. You can give out. Memberships soon. I can give 10 a month, and so it's May, so I can give 10 new memberships. I'll give 5 today, and I'll give 5 later in the month. Anyway, focus. So we, as a society, are, even though we've got a leg up from, let's say, France, Spain, England, because we already have more pluralism built into our system, and France, Spain, and England have borrowed from us, but in different ways, we still have to figure out what to do with the non-Christian religions. Now, Jews are kind of easy. European Jews are kind of easy because there's been a lot of Christian influence, and although we're still, obviously, with what's going on these days, with going on in campus, we've clearly not resolved all of the issues with anti-Semitism. We've clearly not resolved all the issues with Islam, Buddhism. We've sort of colonized that. Yeah, Hinduism is a larger problem in some ways. So, in other words, things are being challenged. And so Protestant and Catholic voices, now, of course, the Protestants and the Catholics won't necessarily agree, even though they're as close together as they've ever been in agreement. But once they would get up the hierarchy, they would then start to fight. In other words, while you're a minority, you can find easy agreements, and the more power you have, the more you fight internally. And now you've got atheists realizing, shoot, this is what birthed Jordan Peterson on the scene in many ways. There's a lot we stand to lose. And there's so much Christianity built into this. So how do we continue the American experiment? And does it mean that you can just lay Christianity aside? I don't think so. But all of this anxiety about Christian nationalism, I think, is way overblown. We are not about to see which Protestant church would win? The Episcopalians? Episcopalian, the main line would be the one. We used to have Christian nationalism. It was the mainline church. It was WASPy America. We had it already. We still have it. It's a stupid term. They're anxious about Doug Wilson. Really? You're afraid of Doug Wilson? Doug Wilson wouldn't become governor of the state of Ohio. The current, more tyrannical right is not about to dabble in religious questions because their coalitions would fall apart. It's a political spat. On top of deeply important questions about religious pluralism and the relationship between big worldview commitments and political implementation. So that's my answer. Howdy, Paul. Would you be interested in being a guest on our Midwestuary Festival 2025? Late August, early September, probably. Well, that sounds like fun. Yeah, of course I'd be interested, Chad. 2025, 2024 hasn't had, I mean, we had Thunder Bay in 2022. We had Chino in 2023. There's the Symbolic World Conference in 2024. I didn't go to that one. So, this is continuing to evolve. And we'll see. I'm thinking about, as I said to Jordan Hall, I'm thinking about event. I'm trying to think about how to do an event that adequately and productively integrates celebrity into estuary. That's hard. And so I'll probably have smaller celebrities because, we all saw what happened when Jordan Peterson went to the Symbolic World. No, many of us saw, and some of you saw closer than I did. I mean, and there's no fault of Jordan Peterson. He is who he is. And, they didn't announce it until the very end when the thing was full. But it's you have to contend with celebrity and hierarchies. You have to. Now, how to so and I think actually part of the way you do it with is size. So celebrity. And so if I do an event at Living Stones, it'll have to be small because the facility is small. Now that causes questions because if you're going to have some celebrity and you're going to have the kind of costs, if you have no celebrity, small won't be a problem because limited people will come. But that also limits certain other things that you can do. So there's all these trade-offs. And now if you do a small event with a big celebrity, like say we have Jonathan Peugeot out, we have a room that seats 100 people. Already a whole group of people will buy, so then how do you do it? Do you sell the cheap tickets first and you ask the people who can pay more? I was really proud of John Vendonk and this whole community when John basically for the Chino conference said, hey, we have ticket price here and we have a ticket price here. If you can afford to pay this ticket price, pay this one and leave these for people who can't afford it. And I think some of those cheaper tickets weren't even all purchased before the event started. And I thought, God bless you people. God bless you people. Because this scale issue is so hard. And if you want to talk to somebody about that, talk to the Europeans, talk to Cassidy and the Breakwater people, because they are struggling with this partly because Europe is just so much harder because it's all these little nations and Europe is poorer than America. And England is wealthy, the Netherlands is wealthy, Germany is wealthy, but there's a whole lot more of Europe that's a lot less wealthy. And so these event things are hard. And so we have to keep playing with them. And I have to do my part. So I should really try and plan an event at Living Stones. Only sold 2 cheap tickets. Look at that. I told you a million times to have expensive tickets. Yeah, I know, Jacob. I know. See, we Dutchmen, we're a little gun shy about that, especially the clergy. So, Europe is poorer than America. Are you allowed to say that? I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but I heard it from plenty of people. And you go there and you realize that there's just a lot of money in America, and you work these things and you realize that to do an event, I mean, look at what they charge for the Symbolic World. It's a lot of money, and it was full. But there was scuttlebutt about that too. And even so, but Jonathan, quite clearly, I mean, it looked like the Symbolic World as a larger enterprise was bailed out by the conference itself and by the virtual tickets. And so, and that's the difficulty of actually running something. And those who decide to try to put on an event, they've got skin in the game. They've got skin in the game. And yeah, maybe not poorer than Mississippi. These are hard things to figure out. All right. See why I love this guy? Jacob is not afraid to say almost anything. All right. Yeah, showcasing Andrew Davis. Yeah, speak about not afraid to say almost anything. I have to focus. All right. Follow-up question. Are there any particular ideas which you have come to the conclusion that the corner has effectively changed your mind in? Which ones are those? How has your stance then and now? Oh, that's a really good question. So there's bounded set and centered set. And I think part of the relationship between bounded set and centered set is you can't see the center. You can only see the boundary markers. I can't look around and say that a lot of my boundary marker issues have changed. I am still a Trinitarian. I am still a Calvinist. I am still a Dutch Calvinist. But I would say that I am less dogmatic and more open towards a whole variety of other things. So I would say that's probably more of a temperamental shift. I was never super dogmatic, but probably I'm less dogmatic and more appreciative of a lot of the complexities beneath a lot of these theological convictions and polarities. I've certainly grown in my knowledge of psychology and cognitive science. How could I not? I've certainly grown in my knowledge of symbolism and my appreciation for that. I was thinking the other day about everything, how I've grown and learned over the last 6 years, and I feel like I've grown and learned tremendously, but it's really hard to say exactly how. So that's probably not a satisfying answer, but that's the answer I got. Traveler of the Wood. Hi, my wife is dying. Oh my goodness. My wife is dying from breast cancer. She's a very rare medical case where almost all medicines affect her drastically and negatively. What can I tell someone who has experienced immense suffering and feel like God doesn't care about her or has abandoned her? I don't know that, we talk about propositional tyranny. We should probably talk about tyranny of the magic words, because we so believe that there's maybe something we can say that can dispel and heal and hope. And sometimes that happens. And when that happens, we call them miracles. And that should be considered in this case as well. The best thing you can do is be with your wife and attend to her and love her with everything you've got. You might not be able to change her thoughts that God doesn't care for her and has abandoned her. Read, I'll put the link in here. Let me put it here. Reading Mother Teresa, a Calvinist looks lovingly at the little bride of Christ. So I actually have a blurb. I wrote a blurb for this book. It's probably hasn't sold that many books. I'll drop the link in the notes here. James Scopp writes a little biography of Mother Teresa. He taught English at Dordt College. And Mother Teresa's dedicated love for the poor of Calcutta brought her admirers from all around the world. Millions loved her. None more than the forgotten that she felt called to serve. But few had any idea that her love for God seemed at times unrequited, that the little bride of Christ felt herself somehow outside the range of God's love. In a series of meditations, James Scott tells the story of Teresa of Calcutta and reflects on the deep faith, but also the nagging doubt that characterized one of the most beloved human beings of the 20th century. You might not be able to bring the level of comfort that you want to with your wife. People have locks on them that it's quite good we really don't have the keys for. But sometimes when that is the case, it's really hard. So pray for you and your wife. It's so tragic. Not uncommon. Tragically not uncommon. Question. This question is framed somewhat by your conversation with Redeemed Zoomer. What do you think the chances are that the conservatives in the CRC&A will pull a UMC and eventually run away after winning last year? Well, that's possible. Chances, I don't know. It's possible if, for example, Synod 2024 doesn't figure out how to credibly discipline, or at least credibly discipline in some way. That doesn't mean they have to kick them out this year. But there has to be some consequence, and it has to be a measured, clear consequence for something that is definitive. If Synod can't do something like that this year, some conservatives will throw up their hands. Do I think it will happen? I'm skeptical, because many of the conservatives that are left in the Christian Reformed Church, Classis Minn Coda, Classis Zealand, the Abide Project, from what I've seen from many of these people, and I'm probably going to have some conversations with them and conversations with the other side coming up on the channel. For many of these people, they are determined. Now, the other side is determined too, but they're determined. And right now, the conservatives have the winning hand. They just, here's the thing with politics. If you have the winning hand, try not to blow it. You have a lot less to lose if you have a losing hand. So the progressives have a losing hand. They, in a sense, now sort of have it easier because they have very little left to lose. The conservatives, they can still blow it. So we'll see what happens. And I don't think the heart of it will be how the gravamen question is resolved. Again, I've got 10 videos in my mind. One of them has to do with this, and it has to do with the angel of the Church of Eastern Avenue and the angel of the Church of First Borculo. It has to do with confessionality of churches, not just individuals. So, yeah. Another S. How are these working? I don't know. It seems to me that maintaining the mystery and avoiding scholasticism is one way to keep multiple personality types in the church. Question: why do people of faith continue to try to geometrically master what they are called to have humble finesse relationships with? It drove me away for years, and it seems the God I understand him, the God as I understand him, fellowship helped me find a way back. That is a great question. So the Heidelberg Catechism says we have a natural tendency to hate God and our neighbor. We have a significant tendency to distrust God and our neighbor. Now, distrusting our neighbor, sometimes quite well founded. Trusting God, not always easy. Back to Mother Teresa. Great story about her. Told it before. This ethicist cat named Kavanaugh comes to find her and says, I want you to pray for me. What do you want me to pray for? Mother Teresa says, I want you to pray for clarity. He has questions he needs answered. He wants God to be clear. And she says, no, I'm not going to pray for that for you. What do you mean? Because clarity is not the issue. The issue is trust. Our penchant to, we talked about deconstructing, our penchant to take things apart, it's generally a good thing. Figuring out how things work, it's a good thing. But like Waves of Obsession said, science destroyed rainbows for him. There's an interesting relationship between taking things apart and beauty. Because my car sitting in the parking lot is beautiful, to me at least. If it were a pile of parts, it would not be beautiful. So Christians like taking things apart. It's not a bad thing. And as you say, faith, grace, the gospel, salvation should all be received. Yes. Now, sometimes when you take things apart, you learn something that can help people receive. But just look at YouTube. All of this explaining. Explain. And there's nothing wrong with explaining. Explaining can help. My whole channel is full of me explaining what I think about this or that. All this explaining. But it doesn't get you across the line. Again, C.S. Lewis, we're rebels that need to lay down our arms. And so, yeah, I love your question. It's dead on right. We try to geometrically master what we are called to humbly receive in a relationship. Now, in all fairness to human beings, just think about almost any relationship. I think about, so I've been married now. Be married, 36 years. 36 years this August. So when you start a romantic relationship, it's so much projection. It's rose-colored glasses. It's all of this stuff. And they can do no wrong, and you can do no wrong. And it's all, hopefully, when you start a romantic relationship, it's like that. Not always. If it goes well, it's great. You know, if you feel so lucky to have her, and she feels so lucky to have you. If you're a guy, I don't know what you are, can't tell. Awesome, wonderful, great. And then the projection starts to wither. And then you start to try to figure each other out. Because, well, some of it's good. You want to make them happy. You want to do what's right. Or you're trying to avoid making them angry because you don't want to live with that. And so you're going back and forth. And you're trying to figure them out. Or maybe you gave him a gift that was no gift at all. You didn't give that to me. You gave that to yourself. Why did you give it to me? You're not seeing me. You don't know me. Oh, okay. So how am I going to know you? I'm going to start to take you apart, not physically. I'm going to start to figure out how you work. So the longer you're in a marriage, you're doing that. And when you're doing that, the love part gets complicated too. And so, boy, this is, in Christianity, we're kind of in a plural marriage. We're the bride together, and we have a husband. And in this plural marriage, all of the brides are talking with one another, trying to figure out their husband. And there are disagreements. And because we're insecure, untrusting creatures, we like to do things. We like to not appear this way too much. So we try to make our tribe big, and we try to, have our faction of brides against the other groups of brides, and we would play all these terrible games. When really we should just say, wow, I'm so glad he chose me. So glad he chose me. I'm going to live in his love, and I'm going to trust him. And then hard things happen, and we say, can I trust him? Can I trust him? I don't know anybody who's, and even questions like that. I don't remember what it was. It was something in the kitchen. And my wife basically said, I don't trust you to do this. So I thought, he's probably right. Because I'm going to do it my way. I'm not going to do it your way. Relationships. All right. Those are the questions. I will drop the link. And if peeps want to come in and chat a little bit, can't go too long because I've got the dog here. And the dog will need to go home for lunch at some point. But if you want to come in and state your case or say your piece or defeat me with facts and logic, or tell me that I'm too hard on Jacob or I'm too easy on Jacob, or whatever you want to do. So the link is dropped. Here's a regular. Hey, Sam.
Why are you coming out the wrong camera?
It's not my fault.
I blame you anyway.
What's on your mind, Sam? Oh, now we're correct.
Now we're all right. I don't know. Tons of things are on my mind.
Oh, really? Not surprised.
So, to answer Mark's question, so I was invited to it was sort of a political fundraisery event, and it was the person who was hosting this party, I'll try and be vague, was Hindu, and it was sort of a political mover and shaker event. And I suppose I was invited because my performance on the school board has been impressing these sorts of people, but they have no idea what I actually think, because luckily a school board is not a partisan position. And this party was celebrating a Hindu festival, and it was talking about how it's celebrating the strong example of these various Hindu goddesses. And it was sort of framed, they had a little bit of a feminist kind of, framing around this Hindu festival that's celebrating goddesses. And so I'm like Googling this festival. I'm like, okay, so wait a minute. So you're putting food in front of idols as a gift, and then this is the food that is eaten at this party. I'm like, this is going to be tricky. Because there are
Bible verses about this.
There are specific Bible verses about this, and this is a question that we haven't. I'm like, I thought that like you can watch Lord of the Spirits and geek out about food, sacrifice to idols, and the parallels and contrasts with the Eucharist and stuff like that. I'm like, I don't think I've ever actually literally been offered food that was sacrificed to idols before. And then all of a sudden, the pluralism questions of that. Like, Western pluralism has never had to deal with that question.
Yeah.
Can you go to a political fundraiser where political movers and shakers are posing with pictures next to Hindu goddesses and eating the food that was in front of them? Well, a Christian can in good faith conscience participate in that if they take, those commandments as relevant. And for the record, the one thing that the New Testament is most clear about Christian behavior, and of all things, is to not eat food sacrificed to idols. There is more clarity on that moral subject than any other subject in the New Testament, sexual or otherwise. And so I'm like, this Hinduism thing is going to be complicated. It's going to be more complicated than the Islam thing because of idolatry. Like straight up literal, no ifs, ands, or buts about it, idolatry.
Wow. Yeah. Interesting. Very interesting. Mark, not so sure, huh, Mark? Steve can't Steve can't stay in the room, so we'll see. Steve, go ahead, Mark.
I didn't come prepared to talk to Sam about this, so I'll let that go. I do think the Apostle Paul makes it clear that we aren't what we do with our bodies do not necessarily affect our relationship with Christ as Gentiles in the faith. We are not converted to Judaism. We are grafted into the promises of Israel in Christ. That aside, I want to push that all the way over to the side, just long enough, Paul, to say Jacob put throughout a challenge saying that I assume it was Calvinism is indefensible. Wasn't that the line? Something along that line. Or did I misread the chat?
No. That's a common challenge of his. One way to live with Jacob is to not take up his challenges.
Oh no, that's why I thought I'd throw the gauntlet out, because I think he's asked a very interesting, or made a very interesting assertion that if we deal with it narrowly enough, it actually can be discussed reasonably. And I think it can certainly I'm not necessarily a Calvinist, but I definitely think it's defensible. So I'll throw it out there and say I'll defend it. I would like CW and Hezi to be the moderators. Maybe Sam could host it.
Wow.
I'm sure if no one else wants to take it, I'm the lowly. I'll be David. I'll pick up my 3 stones and I'll take on Goliath, unless there's some other greater man than myself in Israel who will do it.
I want to first hear you define Calvinism.
Well, that's the question. That's what I actually in the chat I said it would be 2. We need 2 discussions. The first discussion would be the rules. The second discussion would be the question itself. So what is Calvinism? What part of Calvinism is necessarily indefensible?
That's right. And what part of Jacob's charm is evident? Jacob repeatedly tells me I'm so stupid beyond belief, and that he's embarrassed him on my behalf and thinks that no one is kind enough to tell me how ignorant I am. He's really charming. Jacob's special brand of charm.
I assume predestination. Is that the indefensible thing?
I think that's mostly always what Calvinism tends to mean.
Well, science is really weighing down heavy on predestination.
So, okay. So, all right. So with Sam says eating food sacrificed to idols is going to be another hot topic. Mark is ready to challenge Jacob.
Mano.
Calvinism. And any channel that wants to host that, I'm sure the numbers will be huge. Joseph.
All right. Thank you, Paul. And Sam, we will have to take this up on the whole Hindu thing, because I really think you can't associate yourself with Trinitarians and not fellowship with Hindus. I think you got a big problem. If you're going to cut off Hindus, you better cut off the Trinitarians too.
I think Mark needs to start his own channel, TLC Debates, and he can just line them up.
Thank you, Paul, for your patience. Namaste.
Joseph, the 40-pound brain.
Steve was here first. So my comment.
Sorry, Steve. You want to go first?
My comment does follow just on what he just said, and it's short, so I could just quickly cut it off.
He says no, so you're next.
No, okay. I was just gonna say, if we're gonna be hosting debates, and I mean my very long short question to you today, which was all about debating propositions. I hear you about, yes, like just live real life and you'll have those debates and go to whatever holiday dinners and stuff. I think we can do more, honestly, for modeling healthy arguments and like propositional conversations online in this space or in other spaces. Maybe this is the right space, but things in TLC. And I think of the celebrities, not the mini ones, but like the main people, right? I think only Vervaeke's really dealt with this outright, and only a little bit. But when he had his conversations with that professor of jazz, and they were talking about how to productively and like have flow in kind of spontaneity. And they were talking about how to use that within democracy and like taking lessons from jazz music into democracy and having debates in healthy ways. That's the closest I've seen it in TLC, beyond maybe a little bit of talk between, let's say, Michazi or Jacob about some of the Jewish ecology of practices around healthy debates. I know Matt C., for instance, another Calvinist who tried to debate Jacob, but not on stream. He's very interested in, right, that you have these arguments for the sake of heaven that are like, you do go, afterward you can sit at the table and have the meal, but you can still have a structured practice. We call it chavruta, which is like 101 kind of practice of learning. It's Lexio Divina, but it's a debate as opposed to dialogos, I would say.
Oh.
I don't know if there are other, I assume there are other traditions and formal practices around this, because as you pointed out, the Dutch, but not just the Dutch, like there's the Islamic philosophical like traditions, like pre-13th century Mutazilites and stuff like that, also very big into propositional debates around like a lot of issues that, and they could hold them loosely enough that they could still be together. And they didn't have to be one ethnic group or anything like that. So like we can generalize beyond Jews or Dutch or whatever here to beyond single ethnicities, to just like a general form of healthy debate. And I would love, I know what the Jewish ones are. I know I haven't really taught them in a formal way or like presented them in TLC, though we've done a little bit of modeling them, I think, very occasionally. I don't know what other formal things exist out there. And I know now this jazz thing that Vervaeke talked about, this group that's trying to teach about how to do better democracy. And they have a whole set of workshops and whatever content on that. I would be curious to know, though, if there is more. And I think that is something worth pursuing and not just saying this is something you just do in real life. We can't do it online. If we can do everything else online, including stuff that we can't do online, like, friendship and, mystery and discussions of ritual, having ritual and all that stuff that everyone else does and impossible to do online, certainly the propositional we can do online. Why can't we do it better? That's my case.
That's a good argument. And maybe, I was sort of tongue in cheek, maybe I've actually been thinking about TLC and structure a little bit more lately. Luke asked me about it last week on the members only thing. And I think we've got enough instantiation that we could have some channels that are sort of special purpose channels, instead of just individual channels to do things on. I was even thinking this week, I looked at Fandom. I've been trying to think about a software platform that could actually function to facilitate and support this. I don't think Discord has it. And in the past, I've used a wiki for things like this. And I think now Fandom as a platform has sort of been discredited because of the advertising. And I'd rather have something that we could sort of contribute some money to have, something hosted well. But a wiki, I think, is something that sort of you can get the balance of participant produce. So I think we could have channels and areas that we could pursue some of these things, because there's the writers faction, we've got art groups, we've actually got quite a bit of stuff going on that has sort of happened, but we've never sort of been able to organize ourselves sufficiently to do something like you're talking about, Joseph.
Yeah, and I don't want it to devolve into other things that we see on the internet. I understand the fear there, right? So how do we do it in a healthy way without that happening? Because look, you can go to BOM and there's certain channels that do devolve that way fairly consistently, not just the forum, and I get the fear. And speaking of problems with Discord, did you see the columns? I don't know if you saw the title of their video from this morning, The Dangers of Discord, How Servers Enable Grooming and Cults.
No.
Oh.
You can see it live on the Broken Clock Tower Discord.
There you go.
What I'm grooming them for is none of your business. Paul, I just wondered if you had that list, if you finished putting together that list of channels to include in the RICO case.
Well, I know Ryan was working on it, right? He told him to add a bunch of new channels because his list for the TLC search was lacking. And I know he's adding.
Landlord. Yeah.
He's adding some, but I mean, look, it's not. He doesn't want this to be his job. Like, it just happens to be that he made the TLC search engine, so it has the filter that has the options of channels. If anyone else, I'm sure.
Rather than adding channels, he should turn it into a tool where we add what channels of the TLC we're interested in on a profile and make us log into it and record our usage for, his agency. But this is all neither here nor there. I just wanted to make the Rico joke.
You're good. No, and I do wonder. I mean, I was thinking about this for Ryan, and I've been talking with him a bit. Like, how do we? I assume there's a cost associated with like getting all these transcripts in a way, that are usable. And I mean, maybe not so big, but like he's doing this as like this, voluntary service for all of us, and it's very useful. I love that search engine.
I love that thing. Yeah, I use it a lot. Like, amazing. Where did I say block? Like, I'll use it to remember which video in my own channel I talked about something, and then
But I don't think. I mean, there's a fear of scope creep, right? That you get too much, like too many. Like, I want to add people who aren't really in TLC or they're adjacent. Like, and Seeker's Unity is not really in TLC, even though he's engaged with Vervaeke, and the Collinses aren't really in TLC, even though they've been on. Like, do you add their whole channels, or do you add something very specific?
Right. And this is where the Chad's conversation with Hezi this morning, that the divine the relationship thing about the TLC. Well, how big is it? Well, what's included? Well, what isn't included? Are lurkers included? Is that really it? And so that's where these conversations are necessary and why they arise. And with the Bridges of Meaning Discord in the early days, there was a lot of conversation. Who do we ban? What are the conditions of banning? So on and so forth. And again, my priority is to try to keep it as networky as possible and resist the walled garden. But there are certain things that once you institutionalize, you can do some things that just a network can't do. And we keep bumping into those. And so then the question is, okay, what's the next thing to try to see, just like you said, Yosef, to see, they said this couldn't be done, but maybe we can, or maybe we'll discover we can't. So, but we don't really have a lot of organizational, there are some people out there that are ready to kind of step in and say, with some resources to say, yeah, I'm supporting this. I'd like this. So we're at that, but it takes leadership and at some point you're going to then get into the question of employment because right now we've sort of we're okay with freemium and okay, so I've got a membership and Grizz has a membership, so there is some money going around, and we have
occasional GoFundMe's.
The occasional GoFundMe's, but you don't. Once you have an employee, now suddenly things get very real, even if it's just a part-time employee. Because
have you heard about Moises's new plan to buy a bar in Garfield Park in Chicago? It's on a corner, so he would call it this little corner bar, and it's like half a block from his church plant in Garfield Park. It's in a very characterful neighborhood of Chicago. I'll just put it that way. But so he's wanting to buy this, and then like me and Hank and other people are like, whoa, you need a business plan. Like, buying a bar is very different than like a GoFundMe to, send Grim Grizz to, a festival. You can't just GoFundMe a bar. Curious thing. And it could be one of those things where people come to Chicago and put in some, free labor to, help spiff it up in return for some beers afterwards and stuff like that. And, that could be interesting. So that's another iteration of this little corner starting to take on brick and mortar.
Yep. All right, Steve, what say you?
Well, I guess what we're just talking about here. There's a group of people who have a mission-driven fellowship, and they had a lot of false starts and fits and starts and arguments, and the world was trying to change its mission for their own purposes. And they developed some traditions, there's actually 12 of them over time, that might have some wisdom on if you want to set up a bar on the corner, how you might do that without destroying this little corner. If you're interested, I could talk to you about that. But anyway, yeah, I'm the guy who posted about a couple of things. The question that you read was the one about the scholasticism, or like the owning the other denominations problem that I've had, and it's a big part of why I left. I always felt like Christians were drawing a line in the sand and saying, say these words in the way I think that you need to say them, or get out,
Yep.
And I find that that's definitely never been the case, but people do that. Not the Bible, not God, not Jesus, not really the church. It's just people doing that. And then it's also my own projection. But anyway, that really kept me away for a long time. And then the other thing related to that, because somebody had put in the chat, I think it was, or maybe it was your analysis of the Peterson brand discussion I watched this morning. I think that's where it was, where I started posting about there's different personalities, and somebody had mentioned something about how can we have like churches that welcome everybody, because like there's Jay Dyer, I don't know if you know who he is, but he's got like 5-hour videos.
That was my question.
He's like destroying other denominations or even other religions. And he's
even me
Orthodox.
sometimes.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's Orthodox, and so my very, very, novice understanding of that kind of thing would be, well, that's sort of the opposite of what I expect from Orthodoxy. I mean, yeah, they have heretics and they, excommunicate or whatever, but it's like there seems to be, they use the word mystery. They don't even they haven't like left it at Greek. They say the word mystery regularly, meaning to me, it's signaling to me that maybe we don't know. It's like this finesse, which I like that language. It's like a finesse type of relationship with this thing that's bigger than me, as opposed to trying to totally understand the stuff. And so anyway, I know in my experience that there's some people who they value understanding, and they will value scholasticism, and they would need to have their personality removed and replaced with something else to stop being like that. And then there's some who are like,
you're tyrannical. We're going to remove your personality.
Yeah, Burning Man doesn't go far enough. Like, I want to like divide myself into a million pieces and scatter through the universe in order to like have a fulfilling life. And again, they'll always be opposite, or they will never not be who they are. And so is there a way to have a church that both people can fully be fulfilled and commune with each other? Maybe that's not possible. I mean, maybe that's what Pentecost is trying to signal, is like, do that, and fire might have something to do with that. Again, I'm such a beginner to understanding these kinds of concepts, but like this idea of burning away your sins, hell not being a lake of fire as a punishment, but hell being a burning away of your self-centeredness or your sinning or your deviation from God's will. Maybe Pentecost is like, get over yourself and work together to transform yourself and transform the world, as opposed to like, no, Peter and Paul should disagree about circumcision, and now we got two churches.
Well, there's always something attractive about a hard line.
Yeah.
Because hard lines, there's lots of different reasons hard lines are attractive.
Without a boundary, you have no identity.
Right. And that's why I talked about the antithesis, which is all about hard lines. And then there's the nuance. You're never going to get rid of the antithesis, but you're also never going to get rid of the nuance. And they don't sort of bridge them or eliminate them, because nobody's harder line than Jesus. You can read the Sermon on the Mount.
The sword.
Yeah. But at the same time, then Jesus is astoundingly gracious. And so it's all about living with both of these dynamics. Douglas
like a good
Bryant,
dad, you should do your homework. but you know, I still love you and I forgive you, and maybe I'll help you with your homework.
Yeah, yeah.
Instead of you didn't do your homework, you're grounded. I'm not a parent,
That was
so
pretty
obviously
funny.
I can come up with crap like that.
Douglas, I've never seen you before. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks. I'm a longtime lurker, so I just decided to show my face today, I guess.
Are you a college student? Your room looks institutional.
Yeah, that's right. I'm in medical school right now, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So.
All right. Well, what say you? What did you have to say?
I guess in terms of watching the videos from this week, I tried to do my homework before I came into the stream. So
you're not the only one.
I saw Jordan Hall. I saw Redeem Zoomer, and I don't know. I think resonating with Jordan Hall. I mean, of course, he's so many years ahead of where I am, but still sitting in this place of like loving American pop culture and yet seeing a lot of the insufficiency, and like it seems, kind of like we're in between worlds to a significant degree of like, we have the old Bruce Springsteen songs and stuff, and it just seems like I still like it, but it's just kind of not the world that is here right now. But it's an interesting transition.
How did you find the Peterson Peugeot pipeline? Is that how you got here, or how did you make your way here?
Yeah, so back in 2021, like probably in February or March or something, I saw you did a video with Glenn Scrivener way back when, and it kept, the algo kept suggesting it to me, and so that's how I figured out who you were. But I think I found Peugeot I was on Peterson for a while, not super in tune, but definitely kind of watching out of the corner of my eye what Peterson was doing. And then I found Peugeot during the pandemic, and then I found you. But so I've been tracking along for quite a little bit.
All right, good. Citizen Corner, hard lines and hard bodies make attractive churches.
You're gonna get jacked, and
What say you?
Yeah, I was looking through your last week's of videos, and what really stuck with me was the Archie Bunker All in the Family analysis.
Oh yeah,
and
it did surprisingly well. I almost didn't post it. I thought this is just too messy.
No, it's genius.
No, it was no, I thought it was great. And yeah, the All in the Family analysis with Edith especially, I think that yeah. Well, it's, the thing that makes me think about is that certain identities are just locked off to us in our current time period, and there's entire ways of being that you just really can't have anymore. And I talked about at the summer camp I worked at a lot, but when you're respected for the role you play, that can become a whole thing of like, not everybody's going to be the most popular counselor, the most interesting counselor, the most handsome, like we're all in it together. But if you're the guy who does riflery, well, you have to take special training. You're the guy who does it. Like you're respected in a certain way because you have this specific niche. And I don't know how much else I have to add to it, but it's just like, I'm like, yeah, of course. Like this idea of like, oh, well, I'm beholden to you and I love you and you have this special identity to me today, but tomorrow it could be gone. It's like, why would you ever become an Edith figure? Ever?
Yeah.
When you think about it, it must have been 99% of people in human history have been Edith figures.
Yeah.
And like now it's like, no, what is your, oh, well, my channel's small, but I want it to be this big channel. It's like just the amount of attention people have to give. Not everyone can be in the 1%. It's just so obvious that not everyone can be extraordinary, that people have to be appreciated for the ordinary. And the ordinary things that they should be appreciated for is that ability to identify with like a role that is communal in nature. So I know that gets messy, but it just, I'm like, to me, it's so obvious, but it's just something that I mean, kind of H math talks about it, but I'm just like, I wish someone would just say of like, yeah, of course you need to like fulfill roles and just have these pure identities that are just you doing stuff rather than like, well, like we're going to get to the truth and we're going to get to the bottom of it. So I'll cut myself off there, but that video made me think.
All right.
Did you see Homath's face, Paul?
No, I did not.
Oh,
interesting.
I think everybody is an Edith figure, and all of it is denial. The rest is denial. That's my take.
Archie!
Yeah. No, really, I really do think that maybe one of the intellectual powerhouses in this corner will blast that thought away from me. But that's what I think.
All right. Christian Baxter, I gotta land this plane at 12:30 Pacific because this dog has been in the kennel a little while and she's gonna have needs. So Christian Baxter, what say you?
By the nature that I am a priesthood of the believer, but I am not everybody's priest.
Okay.
So that I think is, I just had a real world conversation about this today. Some of y'all, if you've paid attention to a few of my conversations, I talk about this home church that I've found myself in over the last 9 months.
Yep.
We haven't taken communion, and you shouldn't be taking communion on YouTube or baptizing on YouTube. As a matter of fact, I don't think you can. Thank you, Paul, for my
Makes
sprinkle.
it hard to get the water through.
So what is this space? Well, it's it can't administer the sacraments.
Yeah.
And so someone said, hey, can we, because we don't have a pastor. We don't have a priest or a pastor. And someone in our small leadership group asked if we could take communion this Sunday, because we haven't. And we haven't talked about it because this wasn't birthed out of trying to start something. It was just people who were really sad. So, however, what is a church? And I think, what is a TLC? Well, TLC is what a church can't be. And church is what a TLC can't be. Did I say that right? TLC is what a church can't be, and church is what TLC can be or can't be. I don't know if I'm saying it right. They can't be each other. And so when Chad says something about fellowship, I mean, this is a fellowship of believers and a few non-believers, but it's a fellowship. But then we tap into this weird Bitcoin decentralized network around the node of Paul Vanderklay, who's on the node of Jordan Peterson, and then we're nodes around Paul for the most part. And
Are we minors in this analogy?
No. I mean, our YouTube's our mining. They reward us with.
Like making a video is like trying to crack the code of a Bitcoin. Sometimes the YouTube algorithm gives it to you, sometimes not.
Getting 500 subscribers literally cracks some coin. So there's there's pieces there, but I just think that, I mean, so my response in this situation that happened today is, I mean, I've kind of come in my conscience that I use the word ordained pastor, but you could take that up, you can change those words a little bit, because thanks to Jonathan and Joe, like I may be a priest and we may even have communion when we gather together as a church, but the level of sacredness in that communion of a meal is not the same as the level of sacredness that we might consider something like, those elements within a certain type of institution. Whereas this is even a type of communion, but this is even even more spread out from the level of a physical table.
Yeah.
And so it's just about like an orientation and the explicit / implicit realities of hierarchies that I thank old Jordan Peterson for. So I've talked a lot. Those are my thoughts. The end. Appreciate you guys.
Thanks, Christian. Cosmic Muffet, you get the last word.
Oh, geez. Well, thanks. I guess I got kind of worked backwards, because when he mentioned baptism, first thing I thought was, I feel overwhelmed by all the streams in this little corner. So does that not count?
Nice.
I really wish we would connect the material to the spiritual to the technological, because people seem to have this tendency to look for demons everywhere, and they let their fear drive their interpretation of God's will to the point where they distrust everything coming at them out of a sense of being overwhelmed by the chaos of what they can't interpret. But like when people are asking for clear boundaries, like it reminds me of sort of like the cell, and how every cell is a glycolipid membrane around what could be just viruses if there weren't a wall around them. And that membrane's whole thing is that it's got a bunch of holes in it, but the holes aren't just dumb holes. They're special gates. They're incredibly sophisticated. They have specific purposes. They can be partially activated. They do energy exchange, and they bring order, and they transmute one form of chaos in the molecular world into another. And that's the foundation of how we operate. And I wish people would stop thinking in terms of like, oh, if I get the right idea, I'll go viral and I will become a demonic entity that spreads everywhere and tears through other forms to establish my form. Like, don't do that. Stay with like very small number of people who really get what you're up to, because that means you're a part of a well-tuned machine that is operating precisely as a function of God's universe. That's as plugged in as you can get, is to follow a calling, and maybe nobody even knows what it is except for your best friend.
Wow. That's awesome. What an awesome little TLC sermon. That was really good. All right. That's a great note on which to end. Thank you, everyone who jumped onto the stream, and for everyone who joined here. And I'm going to go with a little bit more branding, we're going to do a little bit of dog bark. We'll do Walk With Me with good old Dennis in Old Sacramento. So thanks for joining us today. Bye-bye.
Where are you here?
Oh, there I am. Hey.
Where are you? Where?
Got me?
Oh boy. Yeah. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me.
Come on, man.
Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. All along this Jesus journey. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. Yeah.
Walk with my mama.
You walk with my mama.
Walk with me.
Walk with me too.
You walk with my mama.
Yeah.
Walk with me.
And walk with me too.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
Jesus
journey.
I want Jesus. Walk with me.
Walk with me. Hold my hand, Lord. Hold my hand. Hold my hand, Lord. Hold my hand. All along this Jesus journey. Hold my hand, Lord. And hold my hand.
Walk with Moses.
You walk with Moses.
Walk with me.
Walk with me.
You walk with Moses. Walk with me.
Walk with me.
While I'm home.
Jesus, walk with me.
Stay low out there. Oh, I like to go. Say, walk with me, Lord. How y'all doing?
Walk with me. Walk with me,
Lord. Walk with me.
Walk with me.
I'm on my
Yeah, Lord.
I want Jesus.
I want Jesus
to walk with me.
to walk with me. Walk with David, a little shepherd boy.
That's the deal with that one.
Yeah, you made him a great king. I know David shouted for joy. He walked with David, and he's a little shepherd boy. You made him a great king, and David shouted for joy.
That's right.
Oh, yeah. So walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. All along this Jesus journey. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. Gotta walk with me, Lord.
Yeah! That was rocking great, brother.
Oh, yeah.